How's it going, everybody? My name is Jack Hartman, and I'm here at Crossroads Disc Golf Course in Temple, Texas, and this is my In the Bag. I am representing Team Disc Golf 978, Team Disc Golf Threads, and Team Berg Disc Sports this year. What I'll be throwing is, I'll sort of break it down into the four categories of putters, mids, fairways, and distance drivers, and we'll start with the putters. I putt with the BT Hard Crown from Westside Discs. This is a nice straight to overstable putter that has a good glide and a nice bead on it. I like it a lot because I prefer a beaded putter, and that glide helps it carry to the basket while still fighting winds well because it has a little bit of overstability. Moving into my throwing putters and approach discs. Start with the Exosoft Link. This is my preferred putter from distance, from Circle 2 and even farther out. It's nice and soft and gummy, so it likes to hit and stick to the ground well. It has a nice dependable fade. I also like it for touchy little backhand up shots. Sort of the mirror of that is this Jawbreaker Zone. Now this Jawbreaker Zone, this purple one, is incredibly warped, incredibly beat up. I've had it in the bag for a few years now, and it is my main forehand approach disc. I can throw it soft on hyzer and it'll carry that hyzer. I can throw it hard on hyzer, it'll flip up, and I can throw it flat and it'll drift to the right. Just really covers any shot that I need and is great for scrambling and approaches. Moving on up, I have a newer Jawbreaker Zone in the bag. I like to cycle a second Jawbreaker Zone in the bag, one because I need to beat Jawbreaker Zones in to be backups to that purple one in the event that I lose it, but also because I do want something that's a little bit more overstable, that I can really power on with a flat release, and it pushes forward before the dump at the end, but something that I do still get good forward progression before the fade. Next, I have a Neutron Watt from MVP discs in the bag. I realized I had a gap in my bag at a tournament a few weeks ago where I needed something that I could throw on hyzer, and it just sort of like carry that hyzer, but then when it faded, it had a pushing glidey fade as opposed to like a dumping fade. And so I tried the Watt out, and it's exactly what I was missing. On a touch of hyzer, it'll flip up and carry straight. On a good amount of hyzer, it likes to hold it and push forward, and then have a nice penetrating, glidey finish down to the ground, and as well mirrors turnover. If I put it on anhyzer, it'll just sort of carry that all the way down to the left as well. Next, I have an Apex Bullet for Mint discs, and if you don't have a bullet in the bag, then you're missing out, because this is probably the best throwing putter I've ever used. Nice and glidey, nice and straight, really likes to hold whatever angle you put it on, and can manipulate it well, and it flies much farther than any other throwing putter I've ever used, especially in this Apex plastic. Really like the Bullet a lot. Next, I do have a premium plastic zone in the bag, this ESP zone from Discraft. I love the feel of the zone, and everybody needs that overstable approach disc, and where the brand new Jawbreaker Zone lacks that overstability, the ESP zone picks it up. Is nice and glidey, but also has that nice stable finish as well, and is great on backhand and forehand, can trust this into headwinds, and really nice to get around corners. My last throwing putter and approach discs is the Prodigy A3 and the 750 plastic. The A3 is just a beaded, much more overstable zone is what I've come to find with it. Very comfortable on forehands and backhands. There are some times that you need something that is only going to push the distance that a zone does, but you need it to be a little bit more overstable. I've used Z-Zones before in that, but it hasn't quite given me what I've wanted. Tried the Zone OS, but it didn't feel right. But I got my hands on an A3 by accident and just absolutely fell in love with it. It's exactly what I was missing for that very overstable approach disc slot. Moving on up to my mid-ranges. Compared to my putters, I don't bag as many. I only bag 5 of them. My most understable is the Mint Discs Lobster in Apex Plastic. The Lobster is great for turnover shots, for shots that you need to start on hyzer and end left, where just a forehand isn't really going to do that, at least for me as a lefty, that pushing forward and getting left enough. I can throw the Lobster on hyzer, let it flip up, and then turn over at the end. It's my favorite disc for patent pending shots where I can just focus on hitting the line that I want to. Don't need to throw it as hard because it's so glidey and understable that it'll just fly straight on that line if I'm focusing on throwing it at the right place. Moving on up, I have the new Detour from MVP Disc Sports. This is the newest disc in the James Conrad line. It's an understable mid-range, fits between an Axiom Hex and an MVP uplink. It's nice because of that, because it fits right in that gap there. It's very good in the woods, really nice for hyzer flips, also really nice for some gentle turnovers where the Lobster is a little bit more of a drastic turnover. The Detour I can throw flat and it'll just sort of gently turn over to the left the whole way. And I already mentioned it, but its counterpart, the Axiom Hex. The Axiom Hex, in my opinion, is the best mid-range out there. Just dead straight, so glidey. If I put it on hyzer, it really likes to hold that hyzer and get the dump at the end. I can put it on anhyzer, it'll hold that anhyzer, and I can just throw it flat and it just goes flat for forever. Great disc, even good in a headwind. For a straight mid, I can throw it in a headwind and it really just gets a little bit of lateral movement, not like a really big turnover or anything like that. And it's just so reliable and dependable. I can throw this soft and only get it to go about 200 feet, and I've thrown this thing upwards of 350 feet before, but just dead straight on a laser. Moving up in stability, I have the Swirly Apex Mustang from Mint Discs. The Mustang is a beadless, straight to slightly overstable mid-range. For someone with a much faster arm speed than I have, this would be a straight mid-range, but for me it's nice and dependable as overstable. My natural release is on a little bit of hyzer, and this thing doesn't want to flip up at all. It really wants to hold that hyzer and then finish right at the end. Very dependable. I even trust it in headwinds a little bit. That it's only going to flip up a tiny bit, but really just like to carry that hyzer angle and finish right dependably every time. My last mid-range is this Macy Vela Diaz classic super soft Justice from Dynamic Discs. This thing is so soft. It is so bendable and moldable, it's crazy. When I came down here to Texas back in July for the first time, I realized that I was throwing stuff that I thought was going to be great, but because the grass down here just like to skip and fly past the basket. And so I quickly realized I needed something that I could trust to, especially to scramble and for clutch approach shots that is going to hit and stay wherever I place it. And this super soft Justice was immediately the disc. Very overstable because it is a Justice, so it still has that stability, but then when it hits the ground it just likes to stop, and is great for my approach game. Has saved me a ton of strokes in tournament play. Moving on up to my fairway drivers. I bag 6 of them, and I like to cover really flippy all the way to really overstable and everything in between with my fairway drivers. So my most flippy is the Neutron Impulse from MVP Disc Sports. This fairway is your typical understable 9-speed, but it is a very consistent understable. When you get it brand new, it's a really nice flippy, flip up, hyzer flip, turning shot fairway driver, but as you beat it in, it becomes a great roller disc as well. I have this in the bag for rollers or for crazy tailwinds, that I need something that's flippy enough that it's actually going to push forward and not just when it gets to the ground with the tailwind. Next, I have the Mint Discs Jackalope in Apex plastic. The Jackalope is just your amazing stereotypical straight to slightly understable fairway driver. I use this one so much in the woods on hyzer flips or flat to turning shots that just really carve fairways well. And I can even tone it down, not throw it as hard, and just really get it to hold straight, but still have that fairway driver dependability to hold up in the wind, unlike maybe my Hex would in that situation. Next, and some people might call this a distance driver, the way I use it, it's a fairway, is the ESP Vulture from Discraft. The Vulture is a disc that has just come to be one of my favorites, one of my go-tos. It gives me the distance of a distance driver sometimes, with the feel and consistency of throwing a fairway. We'll push as far as fairway or as distance drivers, but we'll have the lateral movement that fairways do, which isn't as extreme. I trust this in headwinds. I trust this in tailwinds. I can manipulate it hyzer to anhyzer. I even like it on forehands for straighter pushing, farther pushing forehands that then dump a little bit at the end. Next are my alphas, and I have two alphas. I have one in the Apex plastic and one in the Eternal plastic. The alpha was a disc that I came to find last spring and was just an incredible disc for me. A very nice, dependable, overstable fairway driver when it's brand new, good on backhands and forehands, can trust it into headwinds and get to shape exactly how you want. But then as it beats in, it becomes a much straighter fairway driver. This Apex one that I've had is really beat up to a point that it really just likes to fly straight on forehands and on backhands. Very easy to manipulate it. I can throw it flat on a forehand and it'll just get a nice natural turn and fade while still being dependable enough and overstable enough in the headwind. And then the Eternal one is just started a little bit more overstable, and as it's beat up to be more like what that Apex Alpha was when I first got it. Same thing, very dependable. I throw it backhand on hyzer, it's not leaving that hyzer. I throw it forehand on hyzer, it's not leaving that hyzer. I can throw it on flex shots. And the Alpha, because it's an 8-speed, it just is very comfortable in the hand for both backhand and forehand shots. I have smaller hands, and so the fairway class is my most comfortable class of discs to throw, and the Alpha fits that perfectly. Lastly, my utility overstable is the Mint Discs Phoenix and Eternal Plastic. There's not much to say about it. It is your typical very overstable 9-speed. I use this for utility shots or for headwinds. Very trustworthy in the wind. Put it on anhyzer, it's always going to fight out of it. The disc that everyone seems to need in their bag is that overstable 9-speed. I highly recommend the Phoenix. Moving into my distance drivers, I have a similar setup and gaps that are filled as I did my fairway drivers. For starters, with my most understable, I have this Halo Star Mamba. Now I know you're thinking the Mamba is such an understable disc. To some people, their arms are so fast that it's unusable. But in the Halo plastic, it's much more overstable. It doesn't behave like the 11.6 -5.1 suggests. It's more like an 11.6 -3.2. Very workable, very controllable. I can force this over to lay it on rollers if I need to, though I prefer using the impulse for that. But when there's a tailwind, and I've got wide open range, this is the disc I'm reaching for, because it'll just go so far. It has that glide, it has that understability. I can't trust it in a headwind. I would never throw it in a headwind. But in that tailwind and in calm conditions, this is the farthest flying disc in my bag. Next, I have the Wave from MVP Disc Sports and the Cosmic Neutron Plastic. The Wave is just a little bit more overstable Mamba. The Wave flies with a -2.2, and it really does fly like that. This one is a little bit more controllable for me, moving left to right. If I need something in the woods, I'm not necessarily going to reach for the Mamba because of how flippy it can be, and if I don't hit it wrong, it'll turn and not come back. But in the Wave I can trust in those situations, because this is doesn't have as much left to right movement, and it's really it's covering the gap of the Jackalope in my distance drivers, and it really flies like that while being a distance driver and goes that much further. Next, I have a Neutron Zenith in the bag. Neutron Zenith is just a great dependable backhand driver for me. It's an 11 speed, it has some stability. I can trust this in headwinds, but I can trust it to get distance in headwinds. This isn't like a really overstable disc that you throw in headwinds so it stays on hyzer and doesn't move. This is one that I throw into headwinds on hyzer and it'll flip up and get some turn, but I know it's gonna come back at the end. Very, very good on backhands. And then on forehands, I've come to find recently that I like it a lot too. Get some nice, easy, natural flex lines with it. But mostly this is a backhand disc for me that I use in those situations. And then its counterpart, the Swirly Apex Longhorn, is like my forehand version of the Zenith. I use this mostly on forehands. I've beaten this one in so it gets some just great, awesome turning shots, hyzer flip up forehands, just really, really good for distance forehands that are more controllable. I don't feel like I need to throw this disc as hard as I would a 12 speed or a 13 speed with similar flight numbers. This one, again, mostly forehand, but like the Zenith, I've started to find I like it on backhand, sort of that mirror opposite of that as well. Flies a lot like the Zenith on backhands, but sometimes just feels a little bit more comfortable. Next, I have the Swirly Apex Goat with this awesome Waco Disc Golf Association stamp on it. This is also Mint Discs. This is their premier distance driver. For players with faster arms, this is going to act like your typical 12.5 -1.3. It's going to be the farthest flying disc in your bag. For me, with my arm speed, it is just a very, very reliable, overstable distance driver. A very reliable, usable, overstable distance driver. Good on forehands and backhands. I trust it into headwinds on both forehands and backhands. That it'll push, it'll stay on the hyzer angle, and will cut through the wind very, very well. This is one of my favorite forehand discs because I actually like a wider rim for my forehands with my grip. Feels a little bit better. So really, really like throwing flex lines with this or hyzer forehands with the Goat, though I trust it as a backhand disc in headwinds as well. Last disc in my bag is the Atomic Kotare from RPM Discs with this awesome die from Brian over at Cross Dies. The Kotare is a very obscure disc. RPM Discs, a lot of their discs are not very well known, though they've started to get a little bit more mainstream here in the US. And the Kotare is their overstable distance driver. I think what they were trying to make when they made it was something like a Goat, like a Destroyer, like a Force. But what they actually made was something that was like an Enforcer or a PD2. This thing is so overstable, so overstable. It is my utility distance driver when headwinds are crazy. Sometimes when I feel like headwinds are a little too crazy for me to trust my Phoenix, I'll pull this out and just not throw it as hard and get that same Phoenix flight. It is just so overstable, very flat, no glide to it really, just out of the hand it's trying to get left on a forehand, or out of the hand it's trying to get right on a backhand for me. It's a great utility distance driver. Highly recommend checking out RPM Discs, their lineup in general, but especially the Kotare. The bag that I'm using for this year and that I've been using for the last couple years is the Bergs Disc Sports Iceberg V3. Go check Bergs bags out over. Mike is doing awesome stuff over in Australia with these bags. They are, in my opinion, the best premier bag on the market. They have all of the best features of your grip bag, your upper park bag, your pound bag, your squatch bag, but at a reasonable price that people can afford to do. Yeah, they're great people and they're doing great work. This is the V3, this is the bigger model. They just came out with the V4, which is a little bit smaller of a model. Think about the comparison between like a grip A series and a grip B series. That's sort of what you're looking at. Because of the number of discs that I carry, I love the V3, but if you carry less discs than I do, which I probably should carry less discs than I do, then you would love the V4. You can check them out at Bergs Bags or at Disc Golf 978, the only US retailer of those. Over here, I've got my Mini, and I've got my Dry Paws dry sack. I've got some towels down in here, some room there. Over here has room for two water bottles. This is a big 48-ounce Nalgene. It's got room for that and this other 38-ounce. One of my favorite features is this holster here. that works for my disc retriever, works for an umbrella, works for a stool, goes all the way down through the side so there's not risk of it sliding around and falling out. Yeah, this is a great bag, and it fits everything that I need. I'm a type 1 diabetic, which means I need to carry some more things than a lot of other people, whether it's insulin, snacks, whatever, and I can fit it all in here. So really excited to be on with Berg's Bags for another year. So that was my In the Bag. Thanks so much for watching. You can find me on Instagram at T1 Disc Golfer. That's my Instagram handle. Go give me a follow so you can follow me along on my disc golf journey. Of course, thank you to Chapman for filming this for me. It was super duper fun, and really excited to see how you all like it. Thanks so much, and God bless.